Scientists studying Blood Falls realized something extraordinary. This place looked eerily familiar to Mars. When scientists finally sampled the crimson stream, they made a chilling discovery. It wasn't blood at all. It was something older.
The world still holds secrets, secrets buried under ice, locked away by centuries of silence. Far to the south, where the horizon disappears into a blinding expanse of white, lies a sight so strange it seems impossible. A frozen wall of ancient ice towers into the gray sky. From its heart, like a wound that never heals, a river spills forward, not of water, not of snowmelt, but of liquid as red as freshly spilled blood. This place is known as Blood Falls of Antarctica. The first time explorers saw it, they froze. Imagine trekking across the most lifeless desert on Earth, a place colder than Mars, and suddenly, from the belly of a glacier, a crimson flow stains the ice as though the continent itself were bleeding. Was this a sign? A wound from the Earth's core? Or something darker, something not of this world? The Antarctic continent is no stranger to mystery. It is a land where the sun vanishes for half the year, plunging the world into endless night. A place where winds scream louder than any storm, and temperatures can shatter thermometers. A land so hostile that nothing should survive, and yet, beneath the white crust, hidden for nearly 2 million years, someone has lived on, thriving in the dark. Blood Falls is its first whisper. When Thomas Griffith Taylor, an Australian geologist, stood before the Taylor Glacier in 1911, he could not believe what he was seeing. A 5-story cascade of red water poured out of the ice, painting the frozen cliffs like an open artery. His companions, hardened explorers of the early Antarctic expeditions, thought the glacier was bleeding. The scene was like something from a nightmare, or perhaps a prophecy. They gave a name that would live on through history. Blood Falls. But the name only deepened the mystery. If it wasn't blood, what was it? Where did it come from? And how, in a place so barren, could liquid water exist at all? To understand why this crimson river exists, we must first step back and look at the land it flows from. The McMurdo Dry Valleys, one of the strangest deserts on Earth. The dry valleys stretch for miles, carved into the icy heart of Antarctica. Unlike the rest of the continent, which is buried beneath snow, the valleys are bare, rocky, and devoid of life. Fierce katabatic winds sweep down from the polar plateau, so strong they can strip away every flake of snow. The ground is cracked, frozen, and parched. It is a landscape so alien that NASA has called it the closest place on Earth to the surface of Mars. In the midst of this lifeless world lies the Taylor Glacier, a towering wall of ancient ice that has stood for nearly 2 million years. It is here, on its white surface, that the Red River appears, a stark wound in the frozen body of Antarctica. Scientists who ventured near the falls could smell something metallic in the air, like rust, like old iron. The water was salty, briny, and impossibly alive. At first, explorers assumed the red color came from algae, the same way ponds sometimes turn green. But under their microscopes, no algae appeared. The mystery only grew. The red flow was not a trick of the light. It was real. But what was staining the water? Legends began to swirl. Some whispered that the glacier itself was alive, that it bled when wounded, just as a living creature would. Others believed the blood was proof of ancient creatures, perhaps even ancient humans, frozen in the ice for millennia. There were even those who muttered about curses, that the land itself, untouched and furious, was rejecting intruders with a river of its own lifeblood. The truth, however, would not reveal itself so easily. For nearly 50 years after its discovery, no one could explain the Crimson Cascade. Expeditions came and went, leaving with samples, theories, and questions that only deepened the enigma. Imagine standing there yourself. The sky a pale, ghostly blue. The glacier rising like a cathedral of glass. A sound of cracking ice echoes through the valley, and then you see it. Liquid spilling out in a slow, steady stream, thick as blood, staining the pure white world with a scarlet wound. The air tastes like iron on your tongue, though you are miles away from the sea. Every instinct in your body tells you this should not exist. Yet there it is, flowing, unfreezing, defying every law of nature you thought you knew. The more explorers studied the Blood Falls, the more they realized how wrong they had been to dismiss the phenomenon as a mere trick of algae. Something far older, far more unsettling was at play. This river was not just water, but what was it? Was it evidence of a lost world, sealed beneath the ice for millions of years? Could it be a clue left by ancient beings who once walked the earth? Or was it something even more disturbing? Something that spoke of life not as we know it? As the icy wind howled through the valleys and painted the sky with shimmering curtains of light, the questions hung heavy in the minds of all who witnessed the Crimson Cascade. Because in a land where nothing should survive, something was bleeding. In the frozen heart of Antarctica, the year was 1911. The world was different then, less mapped, less understood, and far more dangerous for those who dared to challenge it. Ships still broke against unseen icebergs. Men still vanished in blizzards that swallowed entire expeditions. And the white desert at the bottom of the earth was as much a realm of myth as of science. It was during this age of exploration that an Australian geologist named Thomas Griffith Taylor first laid eyes on something that would puzzle humanity for more than a century. A sight so unnatural, so out of place that even hardened explorers whispered about it in fear. They would later call it Blood Falls. But in that first encounter, no one had words, only silence, only wide eyes staring at the impossible. The expedition had been difficult from the start. Temperatures plunged so low that the men's breath froze on their beards. Tents cracked in the wind. Food grew scarce, and frostbite claimed fingers and toes. Yet none of this prepared them for the moment when the glacier itself seemed to bleed. Picture the scene. A wall of ice, towering nearly 5 stories high, glowing in the pale light of the Antarctic sun. From its frozen face, a dark wound opened, and from that wound, water gushed. But not clear water. Not the pure, crystalline melt one might expect from glacial ice. No, what spilled forth was a river of liquid red, a stream the color of fresh blood, spreading across the ice and staining it like a wound across a corpse. The men stood in stunned silence. Some whispered prayers. Others stepped back, as though the water might rise and drag them under. In those days, Antarctica was seen as a place of punishment, of death, of things better left undiscovered. And here, flowing freely, was the proof, a crimson cascade pouring from the heart of the Earth's coldest and most desolate fortress. Thomas Griffith Taylor was not a man easily shaken. He had braved storms in the Arctic, studied landscapes that would terrify most, and faced the brutal indifference of nature head-on. But even he, with his rational mind and scientific training, struggled to explain what he saw. Blood belonged in veins, not glaciers. Red rivers belonged in nightmares, not the most barren desert on the planet. His men asked him for answers. Was it some hidden beast bleeding out beneath the ice? Was this river a warning sign from the land itself? A scar that said, "Do not come closer"? Taylor, ever the scientist, refused superstition, but he could not deny that the sight disturbed him. The waterfall continued to bleed. It did not freeze in the brutal cold. It did not stop even when the winds howled at 100 miles per hour. No sun warmed this land. No warmth should have allowed water to flow. Yet the scarlet stream poured on. When Taylor returned with his findings, the world was fascinated, horrified, and skeptical all at once. Newspapers called it the Weeping Glacier, a natural wonder that seemed too haunting to be real. Some suggested it was an illusion, a trick of the light on white ice. Others whispered of ancient sacrifices buried deep beneath the frozen ground. There were even murmurs of biblical prophecy, as if Antarctica itself was crying blood for sins unknown. For decades, the truth remained hidden. No one could explain how the water flowed when it should have been locked in ice. No one could explain its red stain. The place was too remote, too dangerous, too cut off from the rest of the world for constant study. The Blood Falls became a legend, a curiosity whispered among sailors, scientists, and storytellers. But let us step back and imagine what that first moment truly meant. The explorers were walking across a desert without life, a place where even bacteria were thought to perish. For hundreds of miles in every direction stretched only ice, stone, and wind. No plants, no animals, no birds in the air, just silence. And yet here at the edge of the glacier, water pulsed in the ice, water that smelled of iron, that stained the snow a color every human being knows too well. Could it be that deep below the surface, something ancient was hidden? Something sealed away since long before humans ever walked the earth? Taylor himself wrote about the discovery with careful words, trying to remain a man of science. But even his notes carry a kind of trembling wonder. He described the site as a stream of bright crimson, as if the glacier were bleeding. To his Victorian mind, trained to separate fact from folklore, the temptation to explain was irresistible. He believed the color came from minerals, perhaps iron rusting in the air. It was a logical theory. But it was not enough to silence the unease that followed him long after he left Antarctica. The years passed. Other expeditions followed. The falls remained. Year after year, the crimson water flowed, unbothered by the cold, untouched by time, unlike the ice around it. The stream never froze solid. Even during the most brutal winters, the blood of the glacier continued to seep outward, as though drawn by some hidden force. Sailors began weaving their own tales. They whispered that the glacier covered an ancient city, a place built by a people who had vanished, leaving behind a curse that seeped through the ice. Some spoke of a forgotten massacre, a river of blood forever marking the land where thousands had perished. Others swore it was not human at all. Perhaps the earth itself was alive, and this was its wound, endlessly bleeding in silence. These stories traveled far, whispered in coastal taverns, repeated by explorers, printed in papers, passed down through generations. Blood Falls became less a place on a map and more a symbol, a scarlet enigma carved into the white desert of the South. But even legends leave clues. Even myths hide fragments of truth. When scientists returned in the mid-20th century, they brought new tools, microscopes, chemistry kits, the first primitive drills that could bite into the ice. They wanted to find the source of the red water. What they discovered changed everything. The crimson flow was not blood, not in the way the explorers had feared. The water was stained red because it was rich in iron salts. As the liquid emerged into the open air, the iron reacted with oxygen and turned a deep rust-like red. It was, in scientific terms, oxidized iron, the same process that turned a metal pipe brown with rust. The mystery seemed solved. Yet something still did not add up. If the color came from iron, then where was this iron-rich water hiding all these centuries? How had it stayed liquid beneath the glacier, where the temperatures should have frozen everything solid long ago? The scientists drilled deeper. Beneath the glacier, they found something that defied belief. Trapped under the ice was a hidden subglacial lake, sealed off from the world above for nearly 2 million years. This body of water was so salty that it never froze, even in the most brutal Antarctic winters. And within it, microscopic life. Strange, ancient organisms that survived in total darkness, without sunlight, without oxygen, without the warmth of the surface world. These creatures were not like the life forms known to most people. They fed not on sunlight, but on iron and sulfur, thriving in a world of shadows and frozen silence. Some scientists whisper that Blood Falls was not just a strange natural wonder. It was a portal into a world that should not exist. Imagine staring into that red water, knowing it has touched no air for millions of years. Imagine realizing that the life within it has been evolving in isolation since long before the first humans walked upright. That what you're seeing is not just water, but a message, a relic, perhaps even a warning. The explorers of 1911 could not have known. To them, Blood Falls was a vision of terror, a scarlet wound in the earth, bleeding into the ice. But to modern eyes, it has become something else, a key, a clue to life's ability to endure against impossible odds, a mirror, perhaps, of what might exist on other worlds frozen in silence. Yet, even now, more than a century later, the full truth has not been uncovered. The Red River still runs, defying explanation. The microbes below remain shrouded in mystery, locked away in a prison of ice and salt. What secret, then, was sealed inside the glacier for millions of years? What truth does the Earth still hide under its cold and ancient skin? The explorers of the early 20th century could not answer those questions. Today, even with satellites and supercomputers, we are only beginning to understand. But one thing remains certain. The Blood Falls are no ordinary waterfall. They are a story written in red, a reminder that the Earth still keeps secrets, and that some of those secrets may be darker than we ever imagined. The world's last frontier is not the sky above us. It is not the dark vacuum where stars burn like silver lanterns in the distance. It is not the bottom of the ocean, though that abyss holds its own riddles. The final frontier lies at the bottom of the world, Antarctica, a place so merciless that explorers whispered about it in their diaries, as if speaking of a demon they had seen. To the north, you find lush forests, deserts of sand, seas teeming with life. But in the southernmost reaches of our planet, the Earth is stripped bare. There is no greenery here, no birdsong, only silence, broken by the roar of a wind that can peel paint from steel. And it is here, in this desert of ice, that a single scarlet wound bleeds. The McMurdo Drive Valley stretch for almost 4,000 square kilometers, a network of canyons carved into the continent's frozen surface. If you stood on the ridges, you would not think you were on Earth at all. No snow softens the jagged rocks. No trees sway in the air. The ground is a wasteland of dust and stone, a place where rain has not fallen in nearly 2 million years. The valleys are so arid that scientists call them the driest desert on Earth, drier even than the Sahara. And that is what makes the Crimson Waterfall so impossible, because water cannot flow here. The air is too cold, the ground too barren, the wind's too sharp. Any droplet that dares to escape the glacier should freeze in place or vanish into dry air. Yet year after year, this strange liquid spills downward, creating a frozen fan of blood-red ice that crawls across the valley floor. Imagine approaching it as those first explorers did. Their boots crunch on the gravel of an ancient seabed. Their breath coils into the air in white streams. The sky above is pale, the sun low and powerless, unable to melt even the smallest patch of snow. The men look up and see the glacier, its towering wall of ice glowing blue and white in the cold light. And then they notice the stain. It begins as a dark smudge, then a streak, then a cascade. A crimson torrent pouring from the ice. For a moment, they think it must be some kind of hallucination, the product of exhaustion, of hunger, of minds fraying in the brutal Antarctic silence. But the closer they step, the clearer it becomes. The ice is bleeding. Some say one man fell to his knees and crossed himself. Others whispered of omens. For centuries, sailors have spoken of Antarctica as a land cursed, a continent forbidden to humans. And now, here it was, weeping blood into the lifeless valley. Thomas Griffith Taylor, their leader, forced himself to remain calm. He was a scientist, a geologist trained to explain the inexplicable. He noted the details with cold precision. The water was salty, warmer than the ice around it, and left deep stains wherever it touched. The smell of iron filled the air. He wrote in his journal of a red waterfall unlike anything he had ever seen. But even as he put his observations to paper, a question gnawed at him. Why? How could liquid water exist here, where the air was colder than the Arctic night? How could a glacier bleed? The mystery of Blood Falls was born. For the rest of the world, the story was irresistible. Newspapers described it with dramatic headlines, calling it the river of blood in the ice. Sailors who had once seen only white plains and deadly storms now spoke an omen carved into the very skin of the earth. Some believed it was a curse. Others imagined that the glacier was a tomb, a grave for some ancient people whose blood now seeped out as a warning. And there was reason to believe such things. Antarctica was no ordinary land. Unlike the North Pole, where thick ice floats on a restless ocean, the South Pole is a frozen continent, a massive landmass covered by sheets of ice that, in places, reach nearly 3 miles thick. Yet here, in the McMurdo Drive valleys, the land is stripped bare. The winds are so fierce that they scour the snow from the ground, leaving valleys of rock and dirt as barren as the moon. Some explorers describe the valleys as lifeless, a place where nothing could grow. The dryness was so complete that mummified seals, creatures that had wandered too far inland centuries ago, lay preserved in the dust, their bodies untouched by decay. No bacteria, no fungi, no scavengers dared approach. It was a graveyard without smell, a silence without end. And still, In the heart of that silence, the glacier bled. When scientists finally returned decades later, they carried with them tools far beyond anything Taylor's team had. They chipped away at the ice, collected samples of the crimson water, and held it to the light. What they saw was not the thick clotting of blood, but something stranger. Water so filled with iron that it oxidized the instant it touched the open air, turning a deep, rusty red. It was not blood, at least not the kind anyone expected. Yet that discovery solved only the surface of the mystery. If the red was iron, then where was that iron coming from? And more importantly, how could the water be liquid in the first place? The glacier sat in one of the coldest, driest places on Earth. The temperature here often plunged below minus 50 degrees Celsius. Under such conditions, even salt water should freeze solid. And yet, it didn't. The scientists pressed deeper, drilling through the ice. Beneath the glacier, they found something extraordinary, a hidden subglacial lake, trapped far below the surface. This lake had been sealed away from the outside world for nearly 2 million years. No sunlight touched it. No fresh oxygen reached it. It was a dark, briny, alien ocean locked in ice. When they examined the water more closely, they discovered something even more unsettling. Inside the crimson brine, life was moving. Tiny microbes, invisible to the naked eye, had been surviving, perhaps even thriving, in complete isolation for millions of years. No light, no air, only salt, iron, and stone. How was this possible? How could life cling to existence in conditions harsher than anything humans could endure? The microbes had adapted in ways scientists had never seen before, feeding on iron and sulfur, creating chemical reactions that kept them alive in the blackness. In doing so, they released iron-rich water that stained the glacier red. It was as if the Earth had been hiding a secret world all along, sealed under the ice like a locked chest. When the glacier cracked open, the secret spilled out in a crimson torrent. But with discovery came fear. If life could survive here, beneath the coldest, driest desert on Earth, what else might be alive beneath Antarctica's vast ice sheets? What ancient ecosystems were waiting in the dark? And if such creatures could live without sunlight, could they also survive somewhere beyond Earth? On frozen moons, on distant planets, in places we have yet to touch? The Blood Falls became more than a natural wonder. They became a mirror, reflecting both our hunger for discovery and our fear of what might be uncovered. For the early explorers, it was a wound in the ice. For scientists, it was a clue to the resilience of life. For storytellers and dreamers, it was a warning that something ancient still stirred beneath Antarctica's frozen heart. The McMurdo Drive valleys, this land that should have been dead, had spoken, and its voice was read. What secret had been sealed inside that glacier for nearly 2 million years? The explorers had given it a name that would endure for more than a century: Blood Falls, a glacier that bled into the white silence of Antarctica. For decades, no one truly understood what they had seen. Newspapers sensationalized the story. Poets compared it to the tears of a dying Earth, and even seasoned sailors spoke of it as if it were a supernatural omen. But when scientists finally carried their instruments into the dry valleys to investigate, the truth they uncovered was not comforting. Because when they finally reached out with their tools, chipped away at the ice, and collected a vial of the crimson flow, they realized the waterfall was not blood at all. The liquid in the tube shimmered strangely. It looked thick, like syrup, and glowed with an uncanny red that darkened the longer it touched the open air. The smell was sharp, metallic, almost suffocating. Some of the men gagged. To them, it was as though the land itself had been rusting from within, bleeding out its secrets. But the scientists recognized the stain. It was iron, dissolved into briny water. And when that hidden water touched the oxygen of the surface, the iron oxidized just as an abandoned nail left out in the rain turns red and brittle. It sounded like an explanation. Logical, clean, a neat solution to a mystery that had lasted 50 years. But the deeper they thought, the less sense it made. How could this water, laced with iron, have remained liquid at the base of a glacier in Antarctica, a place so cold that even seawater should freeze solid? How could anything flow, hidden beneath layers of ice nearly 500 meters thick? The answer to that question was even more unsettling than the waterfall itself. The scientists realized that the water must come from a reservoir deep beneath the glacier, sealed away for ages untold. The immense pressure of the ice above, combined with the saltiness of the water, kept it from freezing. Imagine a hidden sea, trapped under a mountain of ice for nearly 2 million years. No sunlight, no fresh air, no contact with the surface world. What could possibly live in such a place? Surely nothing. After all, life as we know it depends on warmth, light, and oxygen. Without the sun, without photosynthesis, without the gentle exchange of air, any chance of life should wither away. And yet, when the water was studied more closely, there were signs, tiny flickers under the microscope, minuscule shapes moving with a purpose, microbes alive. Life, now the world as most people knew it. Life that had not seen the sun since long before humans ever walked the earth. Life that had learned to survive by consuming iron and sulfur in the darkness, producing the strange red stain that now spilled from the glacier's wound. This was not the water of life. It was something older, more alien. The scientists tried to explain it in their papers. The water had been sealed away during the Pliocene epoch, a time when Earth's climate was warmer and seas flooded the Antarctic coast. When the climate shifted, the water became trapped under the ice, turning into a brine so salty it could resist freezing. Inside that brine, microbes adapted, creating a hidden biosphere cut off from the sunlit world for nearly 2 million years. But the explanations only deepened the mystery, because if microbes could survive in such a place, what did that mean for the rest of the planet? What did it say about life elsewhere in the universe? And what might happen if this hidden, ancient water were spread? The McMurdo Dry valleys were already considered one of the closest analogs to Mars. With their barren rocks, their frozen dunes, and their lack of rain, they looked like the red desert seen through telescopes. To find an ecosystem thriving beneath that icy surface was more than science. It was a revelation. Some began to whisper that Blood Falls was not just a natural oddity, but a clue. If life could exist beneath Antarctica's glaciers, why not beneath the frozen seas of Europa, Jupiter's mysterious moon? Why not under the icy crust of Enceladus, Saturn's distant satellite? What if the Red River spilling from the ice was Earth's way of telling us? Life finds a way anywhere, but not everyone agreed. Some explorers still clung to the older stories, to the darker myths. They said the red water was too thick, too constant, too uncanny to be explained by mere chemistry. They compared it to veins, pulsing with some unseen heart buried deep within the glacier. There were even stories, whispered, never published in any scientific journals, of strange feelings experienced near the falls. Men reported hearing faint voices when they camped close to the Crimson Stream, whispers that seemed to echo out of the ice itself. Some wrote of sudden dizziness, of dreams filled with blood-red skies, of an unshakable sense of being watched. Was it the isolation of Antarctica playing tricks on their minds? Or was something in the air, in the water, bending perception and stirring nightmares? The McMurdo Dry valleys themselves seemed to support the idea of a haunted land. Unlike the rest of the frozen continent, these valleys were dry and rocky. They looked as if fire had scorched away all life, leaving only dust and stone behind. The silence was so complete that men claimed they could hear their own blood rushing in their ears. No birds, no rustle of trees, only the wind, screaming down the slopes like the cry of some invisible beast. It was here, in this land that should be dead, that life refused to surrender. The microbes beneath the glacier had found a way to live without sunlight. They fed on minerals. They thrived in a darkness so complete that even the idea of day and night had no meaning. Trapped beneath ice thicker than the tallest skyscrapers, they carried on for ages, waiting, watching unseen. And the water that bled from the glacier carried their secret to the surface, a secret written in red. Scientists were both amazed and unsettled. For if such life could exist beneath Antarctica, where conditions mirror the icy deserts of other planets, then perhaps life could exist out there as well. Mars, Europa, Enceladus, or even beyond. Life that does not need sunlight. Life that drinks iron and breathes something other than air. Yet a deeper question lurked in every laboratory and every lecture hall where the samples were studied. How could something live for nearly 2 million years without fresh air or light? What kind of organism could survive in such exile, in such isolation? Some speculated that the microbes had slowed their lives to an almost timeless crawl, existing in near suspension, waking only when the ice bled and the brine reached them. Others suggested that the creatures were not just surviving, but evolving in ways no surface life had ever done. The thought was both thrilling and terrifying. If such organisms were ever released in great numbers, would they die in our world, or would they adapt? Could something so alien survive in the oceans we depend on? Could they spread? Could they change the balance of life itself? The McMurdo Dry valleys, lifeless on the surface, were hiding a paradox beneath their skin. A secret ocean, a red river, a community of ancient beings who had outlived entire ice ages. A message, perhaps, that the planet we live on still holds mysteries older than humanity itself. The explorers who first stumbled upon Blood Falls had seen it as a wound. The scientists who studied it decades later saw it as evidence of ancient survival. Yet both felt the same chill, the same unspoken fear. Because no matter how carefully they measured, no matter how many tests they ran, one question remained unanswered. What secret was sealed inside the glacier for millions of years? The crimson water was only the beginning. For decades, explorers and scientists had stared at the strange waterfall spilling from the Taylor Glacier, watching as the blood-red stream spread its stain across the ice. They had learned that the color did not come from blood at all, but from iron-rich water, oxidizing as it met the frozen Antarctic air. It was a revelation, and yet it was also a riddle, because hidden somewhere beneath that glacier was a secret reservoir of liquid water, a lake that should not even exist. Think for a moment about the world under a glacier. Temperatures plunge far below freezing. No sunlight can reach through hundreds of meters of solid ice. No air moves in or out. It is a place that should be silent, frozen, lifeless. For almost 2 million years, this hidden lake lay sealed off on the surface, cut away from oceans, cut away from the wind, cut away from everything that breathes. But then the glacier cracked, and the water came pouring out, red as blood, whispering of a world below the ice that no human eye had ever seen. When the first samples of that water were studied, the scientists could not believe the results. Beneath the microscope, something moved. Tiny, ghostly creatures, smaller than dust, swam in the briny fluid. They were alive, living things in a place where life was never meant to exist. These were microbes, but they were not like the microbes found in ordinary soil or water. These organisms lived in darkness, feeding not on sunlight, not on plants, not on oxygen, but on iron and sulfur. They breathed in minerals the way humans breathe in air. They had adapted to survive without sunlight, without warmth, and without the life-giving oxygen that sustains most creatures on Earth. For nearly 2 million years, this hidden lake had been their world, a prison of salt and darkness, a place where evolution played by different rules. Scientists were stunned. It was as if they had reached into the past and pulled out a fragment of Earth's earliest life. These microbes were ancient, survivors from a time before plants filled the atmosphere with oxygen, when the young Earth was a harsh and alien place. Some researchers began to whisper an even stranger thought. Perhaps the blood-red water of the Taylor Glacier was not just an anomaly. Perhaps it was a message, a reminder that life, once it begins, refuses to die, even in darkness. Even in silence, even under crushing pressure, locked away for millions of years. But imagine what it must have felt like for the explorers who first stood before the falls, long before science had offered its explanations. To them, the idea of a hidden world beneath the ice would have seemed impossible. All they saw was a river of blood gushing from a wound in the glacier. To men already weakened by hunger, cold, and exhaustion, it must have seemed like a warning written by the earth itself. And in truth, the science did not erase the unease. The dry valleys where the blood falls sit remain one of the most lifeless places on Earth. There are no trees, no grass, no animals. The ground is bare rock and dust, scoured clean by winds that howl down from the polar plateau at speeds faster than hurricanes. The air is so dry that dead seals, centuries old, lie mummified on the stones, their bodies preserved as if time itself had frozen. This is why the discovery of life beneath the glacier was so unnerving. For if microbes could thrive in such a place, what else might be waiting beneath the surface? What other secrets might be sealed in the ice, biding their time until the world above is ready or unready to meet them? The red water itself gave little comfort. It was briny, salter than the ocean, filled with iron that turned to rust in the air. It was as if the glacier had been drinking in the Earth's minerals for centuries and was now bleeding them back into the light. The water carried whispers of a hidden chemistry, one that did not depend on the sun. And that is where the mystery deepened, because scientists began to realize that the environment beneath Blood Falls, a place of salt, darkness, and crushing cold, looked very familiar. It looked like something they had seen in photographs, but not of Earth. It looked like the frozen oceans beneath the crust of Europa, the icy moon of Jupiter. If life could survive under Antarctica's ice, sealed away for millions of years, could also survive beneath the frozen shells of other worlds? Could there be crimson rivers flowing beneath alien ice, carrying with them the whispers of life we have yet to meet? The McMurdo Dry valleys, lifeless on the surface, had become a window into the possibilities of life beyond Earth. What had once been seen as a wound, a curse, a supernatural omen, was now a scientific key. Proof that life could endure in the harshest of conditions. But even science could not answer everything. The microbes beneath the glacier were unlike anything seen before. They thrived on chemical reactions most creatures could not survive. They were ancient, older than human memory, perhaps older than the ice that imprisoned them. No one knew how they had changed in their long isolation, cut off from the sun and sky. Were they the same as the microbes that once lived in the ancient oceans? Or had 2 million years in darkness shaped them into something new, something unknown? Some researchers suggested that Blood Falls might not only tell us about the past, but about the future. If the glacier continues to melt, if the hidden brine spreads across Antarctica, these ancient organisms will not stay buried forever. They will enter rivers, oceans, and perhaps even the food chain. What then? Will they die in the open world? Or will they adapt and thrive once again? The explorers of 1911 had no way of knowing what they had awakened when they named the Red Cascade. To them, it was a wound. To us, it is a window, a strange portal into a forgotten era, and a reminder that life, once it takes root, may never truly let go. In the end, the McMurdo Dry valleys, this land that should be dead, revealed itself to be more alive than anyone could have imagined. A place where silence hides whispers. A place where blood flows from ice. A place where life itself has been imprisoned for millions of years, waiting patiently in the shadows. And if life can endure there under the crushing weight of a glacier, in a prison of salt and darkness, what else might endure in the hidden places of the cosmos? What other worlds, sealed in ice and silence, might be waiting to bleed their secrets into the light? What if the Blood Falls were not just a natural oddity, but a message, a warning, written not in words, but in the deepest language of the earth, a language older than any scripture, older than the pyramids, older even than the first spark of fire in a human hand, the language of the earth's wounds. For decades, scientists believed they had solved the riddle of the Red River, iron-rich brine locked beneath the glacier for nearly 2 million years, seeping out into the open and rusting the instant it met the air. It was not blood, they insisted. It only looked like blood, a trick of chemistry, nothing more. And yet, the world was not convinced. Even as the textbooks printed explanations, whispers of legend spread across the frozen valleys. Long before explorers ever set eyes on the Crimson Waterfall, sailors spoke of Antarctica as a forbidden land, a place at the edge of the world where demons howled through the ice. Some called it the White Desert of Death. Others whispered of a city swallowed whole by snow and silence. They believed the falls were a sign, a tear in the skin of the earth, bleeding as punishment for some ancient sin. Some thought it was the blood of giants, frozen in battle beneath the ice, still seeping into the world above. Others claimed it was a gateway, not to another land, but to the underworld itself, a passage between the living and the dead. For the men who stood before it in 1911, those whispers felt dangerously real. They had no microscopes, no chemical labs, no instruments to explain the scarlet torrent. All they had were their eyes and their fear. Even today, when scientists describe the true cause of blood falls, the iron-rich brine, the ancient microbes feeding on sulfur and iron, there lingers a shadow of unease. Because behind the science lies a far more unsettling truth. Life found a way to endure in a place that should have killed everything. Think about what that means. For nearly 2 million years, a hidden lake beneath the glacier has been locked in complete isolation. No sunlight ever pierced its depths. No fresh oxygen entered. No river flowed in to refresh it. By every rule we know, it should have been a sterile grave, a frozen tomb. Yet inside that brine, life continued. Microbes swam in the darkness, breathing iron, feeding on sulfur, never seeing the sun, never touching the surface. To some, this was proof of the resilience of life. To others, it was proof of something more terrifying. Ancient civilizations once told stories of cursed lands at the edges of the world. The Greeks spoke of Hyperborea, a frozen kingdom beyond the north wind, where gods once walked. The Norse whispered of Nibelheim, a realm of ice and death. Sailors who skirted the Antarctic Circle told tales of crimson seas, of ghostly lights in the sky, of whispers in the wind. For centuries, these were dismissed as myths, until the Red River proved that the ice could bleed. And with that revelation came a chilling thought. What if the stories were never myths at all? What if the blood falls are not just a trick of iron and salt, but a scar left by something much older than humanity? The lake beneath the glacier stretches for miles, a vast reservoir hidden in total blackness. Some scientists believe it was once part of an ancient ocean, sealed away when Antarctica froze. Others think it may be a separate world entirely, a pocket of water untouched for nearly 2 million years, locked away with whatever secrets it holds. When researchers drilled into the ice and lowered their instruments into that hidden brine, they found something that should not exist. Life, still moving, still breathing after 2 million years in the dark. Microbes that had not only survived, but adapted. They fed on minerals. They built their own ecosystems. They were older than the ice, older than the age of humanity. Survivors of forgotten Earth. It was as if the glacier had become a prison, a perfect vault, preserving not just water, but a fragment of an ancient biosphere. And like all prisons, it could only hold its secrets for so long. Eventually, the glacier cracked and the water found a way out. When it touched the air, it bled across the ice, carrying with it the whispers of those hidden forms of life. The sight of the crimson cascade is haunting, but what lies beneath is even more unsettling. Imagine a world where time has stopped, a lake sealed under ice, filled with living things that have never seen the sun, microbes that know nothing of trees, animals, or people. To them, the world is only salt and iron, darkness and silence. They do not need warmth. They do not need air. They thrive where nothing else should. And if life can exist there, in a place so alien to us, then perhaps Earth is not as unique as we believe. Perhaps the universe is full of such hidden worlds. Oceans beneath ice, planets where no sunlight shines, moons where life breathes something other than air. Blood Falls became more than a mystery. It became a mirror, reflecting the possibility of life beyond Earth. But not everyone saw it this way. Some scientists whispered that the microbes beneath the glacier were not just ancient survivors. They had evolved in ways we could not yet imagine. Cut off from the world above, they had developed strange abilities, feeding on metals and sulfur, surviving without oxygen. To some, they were proof that life could adapt to anything. To others, they were something else entirely, something that did not belong here at all. And the legends returned. The idea of a lost city beneath the ice. The whispers of an ancient people who vanished into the frozen ground. The old stories of Antarctica as a cursed land, a gateway to the underworld where blood and ice meet. Was Blood Falls simply a natural wonder, a product of chemistry and geology? Or was it something more? Something left behind on purpose? A message carved into the skin of the earth, spilling out in red for those brave enough to see it? The McMurdo Drive valleys remained silent, but the waterfall never stopped flowing. Even in the coldest nights, when the temperature dropped so low that steel snapped and flesh froze in seconds, the Crimson River continued its slow, steady bleed. No one could explain why it never froze. No one could say for certain what was stirring beneath the ice. Those who visited the falls often described a feeling they could not shake. The air there felt heavy, as though it carried secrets too old to bear. The silence pressed against the ears until even the smallest sound, a cracking pebble, a gust of wind, seemed deafening. Some said they felt watched, as if unseen eyes studied them from deep beneath the glacier's surface. Others claimed to hear faint voices, murmurs that rose with the steam as the red water touched the frozen air. Was it simply the mind breaking under the weight of isolation and cold, or was it something else? Something alive, sealed away, try to speak? Blood Falls forced the world to confront a truth it had long avoided. Life is not as fragile as once believed. Life can thrive without sunlight. Life can sleep for millions of years. Life can wait. The ancient microbes were not waiting for us. Of course, they were surviving in their own secret world, a world of iron and sulfur, but their survival whispered of possibilities that humans had barely dared to imagine. If life can survive in a prison of salt and darkness beneath Antarctica, what else might survive in the silent oceans of Europa, under the frozen crust of Enceladus, or in the hidden caves of Mars? The red river spilling from the glacier was more than a mystery. It was a message, a reminder that the boundaries we draw between the living and the dead, the possible and the impossible, are thinner than we believe. When explorers of 1911 saw the blood-stained ice, they thought the Earth itself was bleeding. When scientists of the 20th century studied it, they discovered ancient brine and microbes that rewrote what life could mean. And when modern researchers looked deeper, they began to wonder if Blood Falls was not just a natural wonder at all, but a clue to what waits beyond Earth, a clue to what lies hidden beneath the ice, a clue to how fragile and how unstoppable life can be. The McMurdo Dry Valleys are called the land that should be dead. Yet, as the crimson waters continue to flow, they whisper a very different story. One of survival, one of defiance, one of mysteries that stretch far beyond the horizon. And as the scarlet stream bleeds into the ice, it leaves us with a single unsettling question. If life can survive here in darkness, salt, and iron, what else might be surviving in the places we thought were dead? Ice's memory. Every frozen layer is a page in Earth's diary, a record of storms, eruptions, and ages long gone. Snow falls, it compresses, it hardens, and it locks away the whispers of time. Scientists know this. For over a century, they have drilled into glaciers and pulled out cylinders of frozen history. Ice cores, long, glassy scrolls etched to the breath of the past. In those pale blue cylinders, they can read the air of ancient skies. Tiny bubbles hold the atmosphere as it once was. Carbon dioxide levels from Roman times. Ash from volcanic eruptions that darken the world. Even traces of meteors, carried down through the ages. Ice does not forget. Now imagine this power, this library of time, not stretched across a few thousand years, but reaching back almost 2 million years. That is what the McMurdo Dry Valleys contain. Beneath the Taylor Glacier lies a prison of salt water sealed off since the Pliocene epoch, an age when vast forests still flourished, when giant beasts walked continents that would one day be buried beneath endless white. Every drop of that crimson brine is a memory. Every ripple in that hidden lake is a page torn from Earth's lost history. When the glacier cracked and the blood-red water spilled forth, it was as if those pages had been thrown open. The world was being shown something it had forgotten. Scientists drilled down, piercing the ice with hollow tubes of steel, pulling up samples from the hidden depths. What they found inside these cores was unsettling. The water was alive with microbes. Primitive, alien to our senses, but alive. And these microbes were not young. They were not new. They were ancient, trapped since the world was a different place. For 2 million years, they had been cut off from the sun. For 2 million years, they had been locked in darkness, breathing iron, feeding on sulfur, never once feeling the warmth of the open air. To the scientists, this was staggering. It was as though they had discovered a time capsule, not of stone tools or bones, but of life itself. These microbes were living witnesses to an ancient Earth. They remembered an ocean long vanished. They remembered a time when Antarctica was not a frozen desert, but a green land of rivers and forests. And so the question rose, what else might be hidden there? The ice, after all, does not only hold water, It holds ash from volcanoes, dust from deserts, even pollen from plants that no longer exist. It remembers every storm that swept across the sky, every age of warmth, every age of ice. Could it also remember civilizations? Could Blood Falls be more than a geological curiosity? Could it be the scar of something humanity has forgotten? Ancient mariners spoke of southern lands shrouded in mist, of voices carried on the wind, of creatures that never belonged to this earth. To them, the frozen continent was not simply a blank space on the map. It was a realm of punishment, a place where gods might lock away what should never be free. Legends told of cities swallowed by ice, marble halls entombed, towers trapped beneath glaciers. The world laughed, dismissing such tales as fantasy. But when red water began to bleed from the glacier, when it became clear that something had survived beneath the ice for 2 million years, the laughter grew quieter. What if the sailors had been right all along? Every test on the water brought new questions. Its salinity was so high that no ordinary fish, no plant, no visible creature could survive in it. And yet, under the microscope, there was movement, bacteria, thriving where life should not exist. They were not like us. They had no need for sunlight, no need for air. They had created their own way of life, feeding on the minerals of the earth itself. It was as if the planet had locked away not just water, but another kind of world, a world that had been sealed beneath the glacier, waiting in silence, waiting for the day it could emerge. The scientists began to wonder, was Blood Falls a natural leak, or was it a signal? The water did not pour endlessly, like a river that never dries. It came in pulses, as though something deep beneath the ice was breathing, a heartbeat, echoing through stone and salt, exhaling a crimson sigh into the world above. The McMurdo Drive Valley seemed to listen. The wind that tore through the canyons carried a sound like whispers. The cliffs of stone and ice stood like silent witnesses, watching with their blind faces. Even the mummified seals, lie on the rocks as if asleep, seemed to be waiting for something, waiting for the story hidden in the glacier to be told. When word of the microbes spread, ancient myths took on new life. Some said the Red River was not iron at all, but the blood of a civilization that had once thrived in Antarctica, a people who lived before the ice, before the world changed. When the seas froze and the land died, they were swallowed by the glacier. Their cities sank beneath the weight of the ice, their bodies preserved in salt and darkness. The waterfall, they said, was the earth weeping for them, or perhaps the last trace of their presence, leaking into our world like a ghostly reminder. Others whispered even darker stories. Perhaps these microbes were not simply survivors of Earth's ancient past. Perhaps they were not from Earth at all. The frozen valleys of Antarctica look strikingly like the photographs of Mars. Red stone, endless desert, no plants, no trees, a silence that feels more cosmic than earthly. And beneath the Martian surface, scientists suspect there are frozen seas, briny oceans sealed away under miles of ice. If microbes can survive in the prison of salt and darkness beneath Antarctica, why not on Mars? Why not under the ice of Europa, where Jupiter's gravity churns a hidden ocean larger than all the seas on Earth combined? Some scientists began to see Blood Falls not as an answer, but as a question, a message written in red across the glacier's face. A whisper from the deep past, or perhaps from the stars themselves. Because if life can survive in such impossible conditions here, then what else might be living in the silent oceans of distant worlds? What else might be waiting, hidden in the cold? But the story of Blood Falls is not just about science. It is about the human mind and the shadows that stir when faced with the unknown. The men who first saw the Crimson River in 1911 did not have microscopes or chemical analysis. They had their eyes, their fears, and the weight of ancient legends pressing on their shoulders. They believed they had stumbled upon something cursed, a wound in the earth, a sign that they were trespassers in a land that did not want them. Even today, those who stand near the waterfall describe strange sensations. Some feel a sharp sting in the air, as if breathing in the rust itself. Others say the landscape presses down on them, the silence so heavy it feels like a presence. There are even reports of faint voices, whispers carried on the wind when the crimson water begins to flow. Is it the mind, breaking under the pressure of isolation, the endless white, the howling winds? Or is it something older? Something alive in that hidden lake, whispering through the ice. The McMurdo Drive valleys are a place that should be dead, yet they contain an ocean of brine where life has hidden for millions of years. That lake is not just water. It is memory. It is a record of a forgotten earth. Every drop carries the story of a time when Antarctica was alive, when the land was not a desert of ice, but a place of forests, rivers, and perhaps civilizations. Ancient maps drawn by explorers who had never set foot on the continent sometimes showed a southern land filled with cities, rivers, and mountains. Scholars dismissed them as fantasies, products of imagination or mistake. But what if they were not mistakes? What if those maps were faint echoes of memories passed down from ages before the ice came? What if Blood Falls is not simply a geological curiosity, but the last scar of a world humanity has forgotten? The crimson flow stains the white cliffs, spreading like veins across the ice. It never stops. It never freezes. It never dies. And with each drop, it seems to whisper the same question. What if the red river spilling from the glacier is not nature's accident at all, but a relic, a reminder, a message from a time when something else lived here, something that endured the darkness and perhaps still endures? The scientists thought they had solved the riddle of Blood Falls. They had taken the crimson water, studied it under the microscope, and declared their findings. It was not blood, they said. It was brine, water so heavy with iron and salt that when it reached the air, it rusted in an instant. A logical explanation, a neat solution. But then came a whisper of recognition, a moment when the puzzle grew darker, not clearer. Because as they studied the conditions beneath the Taylor Glacier, the salt, the cold, the absence of light, the strange life that had somehow survived in silence, they realized they had seen this before. Not here on Earth, but somewhere far beyond it. What they saw mirrored another world. The same icy surface. The same promise of hidden seas. The same question echoing through the void. It looked eerily familiar to Mars. For centuries, Mars has haunted the human imagination. From the ancient stargazers of Babylon who charted its fiery path across the sky, to the astronomers of the 19th century who thought they saw canals carved into its surface, the red planet has always been a mirror for our deepest fears and wildest dreams. We looked through telescopes and saw deserts, dust storms, and a world bathed in crimson. We dreamed of civilizations, lost cities, even great wars fought across its plains. Most of those dreams faded with time. Spacecraft sent back images of barren landscapes, dry riverbeds, and skies stained with iron dust. No forests, no oceans, no glittering towers. Just silence. But beneath the surface of Mars, scientists began to suspect something else. They saw signs of water frozen under the soil. Radar scans from orbit hinted at hidden lakes beneath the ice caps. Conditions that, strange as they may seem, mirrored the secret world beneath Antarctica's Taylor Glacier. The comparison was too sharp to ignore. In the dry valleys, life had been locked away for nearly 2 million years, sealed beneath the ice, breathing iron and sulfur. On Mars, similar conditions existed: salt, ice cold, and no sunlight. If life could survive in the prison of salt and darkness beneath Antarctica, why not beneath the Martian surface? But here is where the mystery takes a darker turn. Because the microbes found in the Blood Falls brine were not like anything familiar. They had evolved apart from the rest of life on Earth, hidden away in their secret ocean. To some researchers, this looked like a glimpse into the past, a snapshot of the earliest life forms on the planet. But to others, it looked like something alien. It was as if the Blood Falls were whispering of another world. The crimson water, so unnatural, so haunting, became a symbol of something more than geology. It became a mirror of the red planet itself. Antarctica's icy deserts were not just Earth's extremes. They were a simulation, a preview of the conditions we might one day encounter in space. Imagine standing at the foot of the falls, the wind tearing at your clothes, the red river spreading like veins across the frozen valley. You taste the iron on your lips, sharp and bitter. And then you remember the images of Mars, the photographs of its vast deserts, its frozen seas. For a moment, it feels as if the two worlds are connected, as if this crimson wound in Antarctica is not just a scar of the Earth, but a message from the cosmos. A message that says, life does not end where you think it does. For the early explorers, the Blood Falls were a curse. For modern scientists, they were proof that life could survive without sunlight, proof that entire ecosystems might thrive in places once thought impossible, proof that the story of life is far older, far stranger, and far more enduring than humanity ever imagined. But there was something else, something that stirred unease, even among the scientists who studied the brine. Because the microbes beneath the glacier had survived in conditions that matched the frozen seas of Europa, the icy crust of Enceladus, the hidden oceans of distant worlds. And if life had found a way there, beneath Antarctica, then perhaps it had done so elsewhere. Perhaps the universe is not silent at all. Perhaps it is whispering. The whispers, that word appeared again and again, not just in scientific papers, but in the journals of explorers who had camped too close to the Red Cascade. They wrote of hearing faint voices in the wind, whispers rising with the mist from the blood-red water. Some said it was only the wind, shaped by the canyons of the dry valleys. Others said it was something older, the sound of life stirring beneath the ice, reaching out to be heard. The McMurdo Drive valleys are a place without life on the surface. No trees, no grass, no animals, only stone and dust, carved by winds stronger than hurricanes. Yet beneath that frozen desert, a hidden ocean breathes. For 2 million years, it has held life in silence. Scientists drilled deeper, hoping to capture more than just water. What they pulled from the brine were microbes that defied expectation. These organisms were not like the bacteria found in oceans or soils elsewhere on Earth. They were ancient, primitive, and yet astonishingly complex in their survival. They had built tiny ecosystems around chemical reactions. They had turned iron and sulfur into life. To many, this was thrilling. It meant life might be everywhere. On frozen moons, under alien seas, on planets where sunlight never touches the ground. Blood Falls had become a window into the possibilities of the cosmos. But the darker question lingered. If life can survive in such places, what kind of life is it? The microbes of Blood Falls were ancient. They had been trapped since the Pliocene, sealed away when Antarctica froze. They had survived not just years, not just centuries, but millions of years. What kind of changes might occur in such isolation? Could they still be called Earth life at all? Or had they become something else entirely? Something we do not yet understand? Legends return with renewed force. Sailors had once spoken of cursed lands at the edge of the world, of seas that bled red, of voices that whisper from the ice. Myths of ancient cities buried beneath glaciers, loss of time and punishment. Stories of gods or beings who walked the earth long before humans, who vanished into the ice but left behind a trace, a message. The Blood Falls, with its endless crimson flow, seemed to fit those stories too well, too perfectly. Some believed it was the blood of an ancient civilization, seeping from the glacier as a reminder of what once was. Others whispered that the microbes themselves might be the survivors of something older than human history, fragment of a world that existed before our own, a world that ended and was sealed away in ice. To stand before the falls was to feel that weight, to hear the wind scream through the valleys, to smell the iron in the air, to see the red river spread across the white desert. The silence was suffocating, as though the land itself was holding its breath. And through that silence, the mind began to wander. Was this truly just chemistry, or was it something else? Something alive? Something speaking? For the scientists, the discovery of life beneath the glacier changed everything. It proved that Earth itself could hide entire worlds within worlds. It proved that life could exist in places where no sunlight shines. And if that is true here beneath the Antarctic ice, then it might also be true beyond Earth. Mars has long been called the Red Planet. Its deserts stretch for thousands of miles. Its skies are stained with iron dust. Its poles are capped with ice. And deep beneath that ice, radar scans suggest there may be lakes of salty water, sealed away just like the one beneath Taylor Glacier. If microbes can survive in Antarctica's prison of salt and darkness, then perhaps they also exist on Mars. But the thought does not end there. Europa, one of Jupiter's moons, is wrapped in a shell of ice. Beneath that shell, scientists believe, lies an ocean vast enough to hold twice the water of all Earth's seas combined. In that ocean, there could be hydrothermal vents, volcanic ridges, sources of energy, and perhaps life. Saturn's moon Enceladus hides its own ocean beneath a crust of ice. Geysers erupt from cracks in its surface, spraying salty water into space. What lies beneath that icy shell? Could there be creatures hidden in the darkness, feeding on minerals as the microbes of Blood Falls do? The more the scientists studied, the more they realized Antarctica was not just a frozen continent. It was a mirror of the cosmos, a living laboratory, showing us what life might look like in places we have never touched. But not every scientist saw it as a promise. Some saw it as a warning. The microbes beneath the glacier had survived in conditions no human could endure. They had lived in exile, without sunlight, without air, for millions of years. If such life had survived there, what might happen if it were released? The glacier was melting. Climate change was accelerating. Every year, more of the ancient brine reached the surface. Every year, the Red River spread a little farther across the valley. And every year, more of those ancient microbes were set free. Were they harmless? Perhaps. Many believed so. But what if they were not? What if these tiny survivors, shaped by 2 million years in darkness, carried secrets that humanity was not ready to face? Some began to whisper of something else, something beyond science. Perhaps the microbes were not just ancient. Perhaps they were not even from this earth. There are old myths, older than science, that tell of beings who came from the stars and left their mark upon the earth. In some stories, they built cities of light. In others, they brought destruction. Some said they came from the heavens. Others whispered they rose from the depths. If the Blood Falls mirrored the red deserts of Mars, could it be that the microbes beneath the glacier were not just survivors of Earth's past, but visitors from beyond it? Could the Crimson River be a message, a whisper from another world, carried to the ice for us to discover? Ice's memory. It remembers what came before. It holds not only the storms of ages, the ashes of volcanoes, the breath of ancient skies, but perhaps something more. Perhaps it remembers lives, voices, civilizations that lived and vanished long before we walked the earth. The McMurdo Drive valleys are silent now. The wind howls through the empty canyons. The mummified seals lie frozen in the dust. But the waterfall still bleeds, still whispers, still tells a story in red. And when scientists look at the microbes within that brine, they cannot help but wonder, are these the last survivors of an ancient ocean? Or are they something older, something from beyond our world? Sealed away until the ice decided to release them, the blood-red waters of Antarctica may not be blood, but perhaps they are something far more unsettling. Perhaps they are a reminder. Perhaps they are a signal. Perhaps they are a message from the earth itself or from something that came long before us. If life can survive in a prison of salt and darkness beneath a glacier, what else might be surviving in silence in the places we thought were dead? The wind in Antarctica does not sound like the wind anywhere else. It does not whistle gently, nor does it rush like a river through trees. It screams, it howls, it claws at the ears and tears at the nerves until even the strongest minds begin to tremble. It is a sound that feels alive, and within the McMurdo Drive valleys, where the Blood Falls seep their crimson waters, that sound becomes something else entirely. Those who camp near the Scarlet River tell strange stories. At night, when the glacier groans and the wind slams against the cliffs, voices seem to rise with the mist. Not shouts, not cries, whispers, thin, echoing, unearthly murmurs. Some claim they hear their name spoken. Others say the voices argue with each other in a language no one knows. To stand in the shadow of the Blood Falls is to feel watched, as if the ice itself is aware of you, as if something deep below is waiting for you to listen. At first, explorers dismiss these experiences as tricks of the mind. After all, Antarctica is merciless on the human spirit. The endless daylight of summer leaves men unable to sleep. The endless night of winter drowns them in silence and shadow. Hunger gnaws at the body. Cold stiffens the bones. Loneliness twists thoughts into visions. But even in the age of science, When researchers drilled into the glacier and pulled up vials of that blood-red brine, the whispers were still reported. Engineers who worked near the drilling sites claimed to hear murmurs through their headsets, even when the radio was silent. Some spoke of dreams so vivid they felt real. Dreams of cities swallowed by snow, of towers broken by ice, of figures moving in the dark water below their feet. The whispers became more than just stories. They became warnings. The McMurdo Drive valleys were never meant for life. The soil is so dry, so barren, that even the simplest bacteria cannot survive on its surface. Yet only a short distance beneath, sealed under glacier, thrives an ancient community of microbes, creatures that have lived in complete darkness for millions of years, feeding on iron and sulfur, breathing without air. It is here that the imagination begins to turn restless. If these microbes have survived for so long, what else might have endured? Some researchers suggested the microbes were more than survivors. They were innovators, evolving in isolation, adapting to conditions no other life on Earth could withstand. Their chemical reactions were strange, almost alien. They thrived in ways that made no sense to human biology. And as the red water bubbled up from the ice, carrying with it the presence of these hidden beings, the whispers grew louder. Were they the sound of the wind, or were they something else? A few explorers recorded their experiences. One journal told a man who claimed to hear a chorus of voices chanting beneath the glacier. He described it as a hymn, low and mournful, rising through the ice whenever the crimson river poured more heavily. Another wrote a nightmare in which the red water rose around his tent, pulling him down, whispering to him in words he could not understand. The human mind is fragile. In isolation, in darkness, in the roar of the wind, it begins to invent voices, faces, stories. But what if the mind was not inventing them? What if it was listening? The microbes beneath the glacier live in ways beyond human comprehension. They do not need light. They do not need warmth. They do not need air. For 2 million years, they have endured in silence, building their own hidden kingdom beneath the ice. If life has found such a path once, perhaps it has done so many times. Perhaps on Mars, beneath the frozen poles, in briny seas, life stirs. Perhaps on Europa, beneath its icy shell, entire oceans whisper in the dark. Scientists compared the brine of Blood Falls to the salty seas that might exist beneath Europa. The similarities were unsettling. The same chemical reactions, the same darkness, the same endless isolation. If microbes could survive in Antarctica's prison of salt and ice, then they could survive out there as well. It was as if the earth had written a message in crimson water. Life does not belong only to the light. Life does not belong only to us. But what if the message was not just about possibility? What if it was a warning? Consider the microbes themselves. They are not like us. They are ancient, alien in their habits, older than the ice that holds them. For millions of years, they lived cut off from the surface, evolving in silence, untouched by sunlight or fresh air. We do not know what they became in that darkness. We only know they survived. When the glacier cracked, the blood-red water spilled out. With it came those microbes, carried to the surface for the first time in millions of years. They did not wither. They did not die. They endured. Some scientists began to wonder if these organisms were trying to tell us something, not with words, but with their very survival. The Red River could be a signal written in the language of existence itself, a message to anyone who looked closely enough. Life is older than you think, and it does not forget. Legends of lost civilizations found new life in the shadow of Blood Falls. Stories of ancient cities swallowed by ice, their people consumed, their voices trapped in the dark. Could it be that what the explorers heard in the howling wind was not madness at all, but echoes of lives preserved in the brine? Imagine for a moment that those microbes are not just bacteria. Imagine they carry within them memories, ancient codes, ancient songs, fragments of worlds long gone. Imagine that the crimson flow is not merely rust, but a message rising from the deep. The McMurdo Drive valleys watch in silence. The jagged cliffs do not move. The winds do not stop. The mummified seals remain, staring with hollow eyes. Yet still, the waterfall bleeds. Still, the red water spreads across the white desert. Every drop that stains the ice is a reminder. a whisper from the past, a sign that the Earth itself has secrets too deep, too old, and too strange for us to fully understand. Some researchers see hope in this. If life can endure in the darkest, coldest prison on Earth, then life might be waiting for us in stars. Others see danger. What if these microbes are not harmless? What if they carry something that does not belong in our world? Something that has been waiting in silence, not to survive, but to awaken? The truth remains buried beneath the ice. The red water is only the surface. The real secret lies below, in the hidden lake that has been sealed for nearly 2 million years. We can drill, we can measure, we can peer through microscopes, but the glacier still holds more than it reveals. The blood falls are not just water, not just rust, not just a natural oddity. They are a wound in the earth, a scarlet whisper from the past. And if one listens closely in the howling winds of the dry valleys, one might hear something else, something older, something patient, something alive. What if the crimson flow is not an accident in nature, but a relic of something that humanity has already forgotten? The mystery of Blood Falls is far from solved. But one thing is certain. What sleeps beneath Antarctica could change the future of humanity. For more than a century, men and women have stood in front of the Crimson Torrent, trying to explain it away. First, they said it was blood from a wounded glacier. Then, they decided it was nothing more than rust. Later, they found the ancient brine, thick with iron and salt, flowing from a hidden lake sealed away for nearly 2 million years. And when they looked even closer, they found something more. Life itself, microbes moving in darkness where no life should exist. On the surface, the explanation was simple. Chemistry, iron and oxygen, salt water that never froze. But the closer they looked, the more unsettling the truth became. Because Blood Falls is not just red water. It is history, locked in ice. Think of the glacier as a library. Every layer of ice is a page. Every trapped bubble of air a frozen word. Every grain of dust a signature of time. This library has been writing itself for millions of years. And beneath it lies a chapter sealed off from the world. A hidden sea of brine, untouched since the earth was young. A lake where life endured in silence. When that ancient water burst through the ice, staining the white cliffs crimson, it is as if the earth itself is remembering aloud. A memory too long buried, spoken in a language we no longer understand. And here is where science and legend meet. Ancient sailors who dared to drift near the southern seas whispered of places that did not welcome man. They spoke of shores that bled, of winds that whispered voices, of a land that was alive in ways they could not describe. For centuries, those tales were dismissed as sailors' myths, the ramblings of men half mad with hunger and cold. But when the Blood Falls revealed its iron-rich secrets, the old stories began to sound less like fantasy and more like fragments of a truth we had chosen to forget. Some believed the red water was the blood of a lost people, a civilization buried beneath the ice long before humans walked the earth. Others whisper the gods of old, beings cast down into the darkness, their veins still leaking into the world above. But beyond the myths, scientists began to see something even more extraordinary. The hidden lake beneath the Taylor Glacier was not just strange, it was familiar. Its conditions, the crushing weight of the ice, the lack of sunlight, the salt-thick water, the eerie whispers of life feeding on minerals, echoed another world, a world millions of miles away, the red planet, Mars. Through telescopes, Mars has always been a desert. Its surface is a vast sea of rust, a world of endless dust storms, its skies tinted red with iron. For centuries, humans have wondered if it once held rivers, oceans, even civilizations. In the late 19th century, an astronomer believed he saw canals carved into its surface, leading many to dream of Martian engineers and long-lost cities. When scientists studied the brine of Blood Falls, they began to whisper that Antarctica was not just Earth's last frontier. It was a mirror of Mars itself. The same cold, the same desolation, the same hidden seas beneath the ice. If microbes could survive in the prison of salt and darkness beneath the glacier, then why not on Mars, beneath its polar caps? But Mars was not the only world that echoed in their minds. Farther from the sun, in the frozen reaches of the solar system, two moons glimmer like pale eyes in the dark. Europa, the moon of Jupiter, hides an ocean beneath an icy shell. Enceladus, the moon of Saturn, sends plumes of water into the void, fountains that glitter like ghostly geysers in the black sky. Both worlds, scientists believe, hold salty oceans beneath their surfaces. And what if those oceans, like the lake beneath Taylor Glacier, are alive? The thought was staggering. For decades, humanity had asked if life existed elsewhere in the cosmos. But here, in the most barren desert on Earth, life had already proven it could thrive in places that seemed impossible. If microbes could endure in Antarctica, then alien oceans might be filled with their own hidden creatures. Creatures that had never seen the sun. Creatures that had never breathed the air. Creatures whose existence would rewrite everything we thought we knew about life itself. But not all were filled with wonder. Some were filled with dread. Because if life can endure beneath the Antarctic ice for millions of years, cut off from the world above, then what else might endure? Could there be larger forms of life in that briny sea? Creatures that have been evolving in silence, hidden from the sun, shaped by the crushing weight of the glacier and the hunger of the dark? Stories began to surface, not in scientific journals, but in the hushed words of explorers and researchers who had camped too close to the falls. They spoke of dreams filled with voices, whispers in languages they could not understand, as if the ice itself were speaking to them. They told of shadows moving across the cliffs when no one was near. They described a feeling of being watched, a sense that the glacier was alive, aware and waiting. The human mind is fragile, especially in a land of endless night. Isolation, hunger, and cold twist thought into terror. But still, the reports came. A young geologist once wrote that he woke in the night to find the walls of his tent glowing red, as if the waterfall itself had seeped inside. Another claimed that when he touched the crimson ice, he felt warmth, as though something living pulsed beneath the surface. Were these hallucinations, or were they warnings? Some turned again to legend. Ancient sailors had spoken of gates to the underworld hidden in the southern ice. They had said that strange voices sang on the wind, calling men into the darkness. To them, the Blood Falls would have been proof, a red river marking the prison of something that was never meant to be freed. And yet, science continued its work. Scientists studied the microbes and discovered that they carried traces of ancient DNA, fragments of life that might date back to a time when the Earth was young. These organisms had survived by rewriting their own chemistry, by feeding on iron and sulfur, by turning the very minerals of the Earth into life. They were, in a sense, a different kind of living thing, a reminder of what life might look like before plants fill the air with oxygen. But what unsettled the scientists most was not what the microbes were, but what they suggested. If life on Earth could adapt so completely, could change so radically, then what might life on other worlds look like? Could there be creatures beneath the ice of Europa that have been evolving for billions of years? In oceans larger than all of Earth's combined? Could there be beings in the darkness of Enceladus, drinking minerals, whispering in the silence? The Crimson River of Blood Falls became more than a mystery. It became a story of survival, a story of possibility, a message written not in words, but in the language of life itself. A message that whispers, life is not fragile, life is not rare, life is everywhere. But the message was not entirely comforting, because if life exists elsewhere, it may not resemble us. It may not think like us. It may not share our values, our fears, or our hopes. It may be older, stranger, and less forgiving. Standing at the foot of the Red Cascade, some explorers described a feeling of dread. The water, they said, seemed alive, not in the way of rivers or streams, but in the way of something watching, something aware. When the crimson flow poured more heavily, the whispers in the wind grew louder, as though the hidden world beneath the glacier was calling out. Was it a warning, a cry for help, or an invitation? The McMurdo Dry Valleys are the land that should be dead. And yet they are not. The ice remembers. The water bleeds. The microbes live. Scientists today still study the Blood Falls, drilling deeper, searching for answers. They find more evidence of strange life. They find signs of ancient oceans. They compare what lies beneath Antarctica to the icy worlds beyond Earth. And still, They cannot answer the question that has haunted explorers for over a century. What secret does the Crimson River carry? What story is the ice trying to tell? Perhaps it is a story of Earth's forgotten past, a memory of a time when this continent was alive, when forests reached the sky and strange creatures roamed beneath the southern sun. Perhaps the brine carries the last breath of a vanished world. Or perhaps it is something far more disturbing. Perhaps those microbes are not Earth's children at all. Perhaps they are survivors of another place, the world that fell silent long ago. Perhaps they are a message left behind, a whisper from the cosmos, telling us that life is not unique. The waterfall bleeds on, year after year, never freezing, never stopping. It is a wound that refuses to close. Some see it as a reminder of life's resilience. Others see it as a warning of what endures in the dark. The truth remains sealed beneath the ice. The Earth has kept this secret for nearly 2 million years. And though scientists have drilled, studied, and measured, the heart of the mystery remains untouched. A crimson river spills from a glacier, staining the white desert red. A message, written not in words, but in blood-colored water. A message that whispers of life older than humanity. A message that asks us to look beyond the surface of our own world and wonder what waits in the shadows of others. If a river of blood can flow beneath eternal ice, what other secrets lie hidden in the corners of our planet? What other stories are waiting to be told? Perhaps one day, when the ice finally breaks, we will learn the truth. Until then, the Blood Falls remain silent, patient, and unforgettable. Before you go, share this story with someone who loves mystery as much as you do. Subscribe so you never miss the next journey into the unknown. And keep your eyes open, because the world is far stranger than we imagine, and its secrets are still waiting to be revealed.